Hey everyone. So I sat down with Richard Wayne, one of the premier headshot photographers on the scene today, and we talked all about business strategies. Specifically, we talked about how to find clients and how to price our work. And these are the two questions that I get asked by far more than anything else when people are asking me about how to grow their photo businesses. So this is a big departure from the videos I typically do. Obviously, it's not a gear review or anything like that. It's just a Zoom meeting talking about photography business skills. And we're in a meeting with other people, so some of them will ask questions. There's a lot of great content in there if you are a professional photographer or looking to become one, or just looking to grow your business as a photographer. So give it a watch and let me know what you think about it. I think you're going to enjoy it, and the information is relevant for a lot of different kinds of photographers, not just for headshot and portrait photographers, although that is what we are specializing in. So that's what we talk about mainly. So give it a listen. All right. Have a great day. Let me know what you think.
Yes. All right. So for those of you watching, you didn't miss anything. I hit record just in time. Thank you, Hector, for reminding me. And we're just about to get started. So the first thing I want to talk about before we talk, I do want to talk about pricing, but before that, the number one question that people ask me all the time in the Facebook group, in the other group that I run, and just people will Instagram me, how do you find clients? And I think this is the biggest challenge for us as photographers in especially in the space we're in, especially if we're doing mainly headshots and portraits, right? Because now you've also limited the amount of photography clients you can get. So I'd like to start there. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that we've covered a lot of this stuff in the past, Pete. You and I did some articles on that. We did some video work on that. I looked back. I actually wrote a post about that kind of stuff in like 2015 and 2017. So this is kind of old hat that I'm going to put back into circulation, but there are a lot of different ways to find clients. But I'm about to dispel the one thing that kind of gets in my craw a lot is the fact that none of this is overnight. There are no magic bullets to this. Okay. So what I mean by that is, you see a lot of these new photographers coming on the scene because there's no barrier to entry. So they'll pick up a camera with a couple of $100, slap a shingle outside their place of business and call themselves a professional, right? And so what they're missing in this equation, and the reason that a lot of us are so successful at what we do, is because we have failed way more than anybody else has. If I told you what my early career looked like, you'd say, and you lived like that? Yeah, that's kind of what entrepreneurs do. We suffer through the pain early on so that we set ourselves up for success much later in life. And so this is not going to be an easy route to making money, but these are the things that you could implement today, right? And if you do it often enough and regularly enough, you will start to develop authority in your field. So I actually researched a little bit of what I wrote way back when as a refresher for myself. All of this is still very true today. So I actually started here with websites, right? Obviously, I'm well known for website work, and the reason that came about was out of my own need. You see, when I first started, I just slapped together a website with whatever pictures I had and said, yes, if I build it, they will come.
Right.
And they didn't come. And so what did I do wrong? So I said, all right, maybe what I need is something that speaks to the people that I serve, but also has my personality injected into it. And so I started to build, and I couldn't really get close. And so one of the things that I did was I took time, I took 3 steps back, and I taught myself how to code, basically HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And so that kind of became a launching pad for what I needed for my business, and thankfully, other people appreciated those services too. So basically, when it comes down to websites, right, you're not talking about selling there. And that's one of the mistakes I see people make a lot, is that while it is a sales tool, it's also a marketing tool, and it's also a place to house your photos to show your work. But remember, nobody is going to buy simply because you're selling. And so I'm going to flip the script a little bit on you and tell you that this is more about how you are the best solution to somebody's problem.
Right.
And here's the catch is that you don't really know what their problem is.
Right.
And let's be honest, right? As headshot photographers, as other types of photographers, and I really don't know the breadth of the folks that we have in the group here, Pete, and maybe you can attest to some of this, but in all walks, people don't just happen upon our websites. It's very rare that somebody says, you know what, let me go surfing the internet and I came across this photographer site and I'm going to spend some time there. Oh, yeah, I'll make a purchase with that guy or
Yeah.
that lady.
Right. Right.
It's so rare that that happens. And because now we understand that people aren't just happening upon our sites, we really need to be intentional, both about the experience that we're trying to provide. When I say experience, I don't necessarily just mean the photography experience that we provide in the way of service. But what does that user experience look like as they make their way through your website? If that is not presenting you both effectively as a solution to a problem, and it's not presenting you as professional, then we might want to spend some time on that, right?
Yeah.
If it doesn't really feel high end, let's just say that, for example, if you got 16 different fonts and half of them look like, you just murdered somebody, and the other half look like you came out of a comic, right? Pete,
Comic
you're
Sans.
you're a college professor. How often did you see the Comic Sans font,
Oh,
right?
Lord have mercy. Or I had
Right.
someone once gave me a paper in a college level course where every sentence ended with an exclamation point. I'm not
There
even
you go.
joking.
And so these are the little things that we don't really think about, but it's how you communicating your professionalism, your ability to solve somebody's problems,
Right.
right? I like to think, and I always say this, I think of a website as a journey, not a destination. It's
Mm.
never done. So please do not think you're just going to put it up there and that's the end of that. They're just going to come
Right. You're just looking to
every
watch.
day.
All right. I
Yeah.
should be booking clients now. Wait, I haven't updated my site in a year. Why don't I have any clients? Right.
Right.
We've all been there.
Right. It's an evolution, and you're going to improve that, what I say, 1% better every day. So look at a section, make it a little bit better that day. Come back to it a couple of days later, make it 1% better that day. Right. These are iterations that I think we need to go through.
Mm.
Now, when I was going through my learning stages of website build and design, and I'm just going to say front end web development because that's really what it is. I would tell you I'm a terrible web designer, but I can build, right? I just know what I like and what works
Mhm.
for my demographics. But through the build process, what I discovered is that I do not think that something like search engine optimization is completely different from building a site. In fact, it needs to be built into the site. Otherwise, you're kind of spinning your wheels,
Can you unpack that a
right?
little bit?
Yeah, because that's actually step number two, good
Nice.
SEO, right? So, what is
Okay.
good SEO,
What
right?
is
What is
SEO?
that?
What is SEO, period, for people don't even know what that is?
All right. So, SEO stands for search engine optimization. Now, in the SEO world, only three things move the needle: what your competitors do, what you do, and what Google and by proxy other search engines decide to do. So we'll say this: we have zero control over what Google and by proxy other search engines decide to do with how they rank things. And what that could be a couple of hour discussion on how they go through their ranking factors and so on. But to say this simply, we don't have control over that. This is what they've decided. Your competitors might react a certain way and they'll change things on their site. So that could move the needle. And what you decide to do could move the needle. And you're always kind of in competition with that. Now, I don't necessarily think it matters if you're the number one spot or the number two spot, but there's a big difference between that and being on page two,
Right, right.
right? So, what we really need to do is understand where SEO has come from and where it is today. And SEO way back when, I used to be able to do what, I guess these technical type of things like header tags, alt tags, and put some good pictures up there. And it used to be pretty easy to rank.
Yeah.
right? And we can dive into the minutia of all that at some point, but we have evolved exponentially over periods of time. Basically, Google got a lot of feedback from other advertisers and other businesses saying that, the search intent of the people that were using those browsers and those search engines, they should have been served better quality results. Okay. In other words, better results that served the intention of the query that was asked. But that never really happened because it was too easy to rank in other methods.
Mm.
So they said, okay, we're going to change things up really, really badly. We're going to flip it on its ear. And some of you are going to hurt really badly, and some of you aren't. And those that aren't have an opportunity to kind of stay where you are. And those that are hurting, you'll have an opportunity to get up there. So what they did was they released something called the Helpful Content Update. And what that update said is that what they're going to do is take their artificial intelligence and they're going to crawl either a section of one of your pages, one page, or your entire website. And they're looking for content that is both helpful and useful to human beings. I'm going to say that again because that sounds slightly ominous if you ask me. They're deploying artificial intelligence to look at your site to determine if your content is best served to human beings,
Right.
if it's helpful for humans. Well, that's kind of like, what? Huh? So if I were to use the word headshots, right? Because I'm a headshot photographer, Pete's a headshot photographer. I assume we have a lot of other headshot photographers in there. If I put the word headshots into Google, I'm probably going to get a whole lot of headshots, right? I'm going to get a lot of pictures. Some people might say, what is a headshot? But what if I change that term to headshot photographer? Now, suddenly I look like I'm looking for services,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, what we're talking about here is user intent. What do they need? And Google can actually understand all of this stuff,
Mm.
right? They understand intent. So, our content needs to be served in a way that addresses user intent.
Mm.
So,
Cool.
what I'm saying in a very, well, very long winded way is that your content is king. What you put on your website is very, very important. Now you know why you cannot be salesy, because not only will you
Right.
turn a whole lot of people off in the process, but you're not developing any sort of authority in that process either. So
Can I?
now you're not going to be found either. Go ahead, Pete. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I just want to piggyback on that because this is gold. And the so you're talking a lot, like you were talking more towards um like content in like the language you use and
Yes.
what your how you propose your services to people. And so but I want to piggyback on that because when you say content, right, we're actually talking not just about that and how important it is, like how you set up the site so that people understand in a non-salesy way that they need you, right? Like or that they that oh, this is what I was looking for without it being here's here's the top 5 reasons why you should hire me for your headshot or something like so salesy that no one will care about it. But for
Yeah.
me, the other part of it too, and I know for you as well, is then that also it's not just the text you have on there, but now it's also the images you choose to display. And here's something that I will never understand. I guess early in my career as a headshot photographer, I was guilty of this too. But you're so excited about a shoot that you just share everything that you shoot. And
Mhm.
I think that one of the biggest ways that we can easily, there's two things, easily to make our presentation much more professional is first you don't have to post everything you take. Like if you take a headshot and it's not stellar, don't put it on your Instagram, don't add it to your website. People don't need to see that. So it's not going to help you grow, right? And in fact, if I'm used to seeing a photographer who takes really really stellar headshots or portraits and then something kind of mediocre pops up in their feed, then I'm like, whoa, that's not what I'm used to from you. So I think like being much more like thoughtful about what we post on the site image wise. And then the other thing that I see a lot of people do with their websites, because we'll do like website reviews in the Kajabi group, is people will you'll go to a website and then right away I feel like I say it's like looking at a diner menu, right? So Rich knows if you're from like New York or places wherever they have like a real Greek diner. This menu, it's like 50 pages long. I'm not even joking. You could get any food under the sun you want. You want sushi at like 3 a.m., you're gonna get it. You want chicken cutlet parmesan, you can get it. You want like it's amazing. But then you open this menu and you're, like it's overwhelming. So we want to make sure that like the site is tailored towards the client you want. Like if you want to get headshot clients, I don't want to scroll through 500 engagement photos in a meadow somewhere. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see pregnant ladies. I don't want to see weddings. I don't want to see any of that. So one of the things that Rich really helped me with when I started my headshot and portrait business, and he really helped me tweak my website, is like we simplified it to the point where there's basically 2 pages, right? Like I have a couple of other pages kind of buried in the footer, just of stuff that I like having there. But when someone goes on the site, there's calls to action. You scroll every few, like whatever distance, every page you have a call to action, get pricing. So it's very easy for clients to book me. Like I woke up this morning, I looked at my phone and oh great, I got another client. So can you talk and I'll let you talk about that for a moment, and then the other thing is I'll forget, I'll hold that thought if we have time for it, but can you just speak a little bit towards that, because I know that made a huge difference in me just being able to find clients.
Yeah. And we can talk about that. I want to just take 2 seconds and back up a little bit and talk about portfolio, because that's kind of a really big thing. It's actually on my
Right,
list.
right.
You can be the best photographer in the world, and none of that is useful if nobody can find you.
Right.
So, I mean, what difference does it make? How are you going to generate business otherwise? And there are plenty of ways to generate business. I am not suggesting website is the only way, but basically that's our online directory. And this is where people go to find information about us. So portfolio is very important. I am not going to tell you that it's not important. You've got to show your best work, period, hands down. But what good is a good portfolio if nobody can find you? So they work hand in hand.
Yep.
Regarding the question that you just asked, Pete, right? I am a big advocate for the idea of clarity and simplicity. And the reason why is because, human beings don't have attention spans anymore. They won't read, right? I mean, today's generation doesn't even know what the inside of a book looks like.
Right.
Don't ask them to actually read the stuff on your website. Keep it simple, keep it straightforward. Always keep what you want them to do in front of you. So I think of a navigation or calls to action, kind of like the yellow brick road. There's only one entrance and one ending, right? In other words, I am defining the path that I want you to take. I am not presenting you with 20 different options and hoping you end up on my pricing page.
Right.
That there's no way I'm going to do that, because then what I might run into is something called a leaky funnel. Basically, what we have is a sales funnel. That's really all it is.
Well, we've all been there for middle-aged men. No, I'm
Well,
sorry. Go on.
Pete, that might be a problem that you want to talk to your doctor
Oh
about. I
wait,
don't
I'm
know.
thinking something totally different. Go on.
But what we're talking about, people get onto your website, it's your homepage. And how many of you have a navigation at the top of the page that has things like blog, about, social profiles, all of the other things, and my 16 different services, and it's all laid out at the top of the page? How many of you do that?
They're not
All
gonna
of you,
tell.
it looks like. All of you. I could see all those hands going up and all that exuberance. As Alan Greenspan once called, irrational exuberance. I love it. So basically, I see that a lot, right? But here's the question. If you're going to put all of that stuff in your navigation, my question to you, if I were to happen upon your site, is what is it that you want me to do? What do you want me to look at? Because if I don't know, I'm going to make it up and tell my own story, and who knows where that could end up. Right. But if you give me direction and you clear the path and show me where you want me to go in your funnel, I'll get there. Think about this. When people end up on our sites, it's because they're looking for people that do what we do. They don't end up there just by happenstance. And because of that, we already understand that they probably are looking for a photographer. If so, what's the number one question we're going to get right off the bat? Anybody? Bueller?
Mhm.
How
Bueller?
much?
Cost.
How much? Who said it? Right
Cost.
there you go. How much? Absolutely. How much do you cost? That's the number one question. Do you think they care who you are at that point? No.
Nope.
Do you really want to send them to your social profiles, which is off of your website at that point? Doesn't make a great deal of sense to take them in other directions if you're only trying to answer the question. Right? Now, different people have different ideas about what they want to put up there. If you are, and I'm not going to call myself a one-trick pony, but my specialty is in headshot photography, and I don't really veer from that. So in my particular case, there's only one question and one place to go, the pricing page. So I put a get pricing button at the top of the site, and that's the entire navigation. Depending on what your business looks like, you might think of it otherwise. So weigh that into your consideration by clearing the path and defining the journey for your users.
Yep.
Okay. That's the simplicity of it all. And as to why I repeat calls to action through my site, even though the header of my website is what we call sticky, it sticks to the top, it won't change, it won't move. You can keep scrolling and it'll still be there, and that button will still be there. That doesn't necessarily mean people are looking at it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I always keep another get pricing button or the call to action that I want them to take. Now, the last point on calls to action, because I know that we could talk about this for a long time as well. My last points on calls to action is this. Don't use words like learn more or get started. What is it that you want me to get started with? Dinner? You want me to go change the oil? What should I learn more about? Be specific. Use words that are going to be very clear to the user that this is what's going to happen when they push this button. Okay, clarity is king. Okay,
So
remember, people don't read, so
they
keep it
don't.
simple.
They don't. And the dumber, the more, not that you dumb it down, but you have to remember, like, we're so inundated with content, like you really need to streamline it. I want to mention one quick thing in the vein, in the same area before we move on, which is when it comes to presenting yourself as the solution to their problems, or having it be relevant to them. One thing that I've noticed on my website that has been a huge help to helping me gain clients. And I've had multiple clients tell me that this is why they booked with me. One of the main reasons is I have a promo video there. And all it is I had a friend who's a great videographer help me out with it. So it has good production value, and it looks good, and it's like it's done well. But it's just me talking about why I do what I do, why I love doing it, how I help people, some, B-roll of me interacting with a client. And it gives people a glimpse into not only what the experience is like working with me, but also what my personality is. So they already feel like they know me when they go to book. And I have to tell you all that I think this is such an important thing to have on your sites. Like, because people want to work with people. And I think we get so caught up in the digital way of everything, and the online stuff. But at the end of the day, we're still a people business. And I know that when my clients review me, they're constantly they'll say the photos were awesome. I love the photos. Sure, we all want to hear that. But really, with the most that they talk about is the experience. And they're like, Pete was so easy to work with. I felt comfortable working with him. I enjoyed my time. I never thought I'd have fun getting my headshot taken. He made it easygoing. He had whatever, stuff like that. So I think that's a good way to help you like something that you all can do. Doesn't have to be the top production value, but you can all make a clean, nice looking video that just shows you. And you can go to my website, check out mine if you want some ideas.
I think that's a really valuable point, Pete. Video is going to show people what an experience with you is like. I mean, I don't know if you guys are like my clients or like me at all in any way, but one of the big things that I deal with my clients is most of them don't want to be there. They
Exactly.
need to be there, but they don't want to be there. So the best thing that we can do is not just tell them, oh, you're going to have a great time. It's really easy. Don't worry. Nobody wants to hear that shit.
Mm-hmm.
The first time you tell them, don't worry about it, what are they going to do? They're
Worry
going to
about it.
worry about it. So instead, let's just show them, right? Show them what working with you is like. Show them what you're going to bring to the session, right? That's really important. When people know right off the bat what an experience with you is like, they're going to feel a lot more comfortable with you.
Right.
Okay.
Then
So
you don't have
that's
to
really
sell.
important.
And
No,
then that's the goal, is to not sell, right? You want people to
exactly.
just, that you want them to see and understand on their own that this is the right choice for me. Um,
Yeah.
can you speak for a moment? We got a couple of questions in here, but a good question is, um, does blogging still work?
I'm glad this question came up
Great
because
question.
that too is actually on my list. If you would have asked me 3 years ago if blogging helped in any way, I'd say, not really. Because honestly, I've set up many pages and I was ranking within a month, right? Maybe even less. It wasn't hard back then to do. But now when content is king,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all about your authority and how you're going to put yourself out there as having some level of expertise, and Google's going to pick up on it. Yeah, blogging can be helpful,
Mm-hmm.
but please don't blog for the sake of blogging, right? It's got to be with some degree of expertise. Like,
Right.
think about the topic you're going to put out into the world, and is that topic helpful and useful to would-be clients? If it is not, then, and you're thinking, here, this is my latest session with so and so, and you talk about that, there's probably not a great deal of value in that. However, if you're going to talk about it, and one of my best performing blogs is more to do with why you hate your headshot and what to do about it. For some
Mhm.
reason, that thing really blows up, and I can't explain why, except for the fact that a lot of people really do hate their headshot
Yeah.
and they
Most
want to know
people.
what to do about it. So clearly, that
Mhm.
is something that people are looking for. So think that through a little bit. Now, on that same topic, I will say this about blogging, and I really, really mean this. I'm okay using AI. Okay, you can go out to your chat GPT, you can go to Gemini, you can go to Claude, you can go to all of the AI services, and you can ideate there. Okay, please do not ask it to spit out a blog, copy that text, throw it on your site. And the reason why is we have no idea where that content is coming from.
Yeah.
We don't know the source. Frankly, it could very well be plagiarized from other sources. Okay. On top of which, most of these AI generators will hallucinate. They may not spit factual information out at you.
Right.
So please scrub it with a fine tooth comb and reword it, put it into your own voice. So it is an idea generator. It'll give
Right.
you some direction, right? Based on how good your prompts are, however.
Yeah.
Okay. And now AI has come a long way. And I think that we're going to be going down an interesting rabbit hole with AI. But as it relates to blogging,
All
number
set.
one,
Yeah.
unique content. That's really
Anything
important.
else?
Um, yeah, there's a lot more. Sorry, bud.
I
Right?
muted.
Unique content.
Oh, go ahead.
I wish
Oh,
I
good.
could, but you had
Sorry.
muted me. Thanks, bud.
I hit the wrong mute.
All good, all good. So you want to put unique content into the world that's in your own voice with a firmer grasp of the material, right? So that you're putting your authority out there. But it also must be helpful and useful to human beings.
Yeah.
Okay. do that. But here's the interesting part about blogging, and even in some ways to your website too. You're going to put some images on there. I don't care, one, two. You're going to put some alt tags on there. And we could talk about that a little bit later if you'd like, of what alt tagging is. It just stands for alternative text, right? Basically, if the image didn't pop up, these are the words that would be on the screen. Or if you were visually impaired and could not actually see the image clearly, they use screen readers to determine or to speak the words that are on the page. But it also helps to categorize these images via like Google, right?
Hmm.
So Google knows what you're putting up there. But here's the big thing. Here's the magic. I'm about to sprinkle magic dust all over the place. Come on, guys. Here we're sprinkling. All of that crap is kind of less important than putting a picture that has alt tags in relation to the context and the content around it. Does that make sense? You're reinforcing the content. If there's no context, for instance, I'm a headshot photographer talking about why you hate your picture, and I put up a beach photo. Hello, there's
Yeah.
no context. We have to reinforce one another. Picture reinforces content, content reinforces picture. Google will now understand. So, a long way of saying, yes, blogging has become more important, but now you're going to do it regularly and consistently.
Before you continue, real quick, video blog or written blog or both? I tend to think do both. But
I would tell you to write your blog for your site, put the link to your blog in your footer, not at the top of your page, right? But in your footer. Now create written blogs. And if you want to do a video blog, we have a more powerful search engine called YouTube.
exactly. And that's people know I have a YouTube channel, and even though it's mainly for photographers, not for clients trying to find me, I do have some videos on like how to look good in a headshot kind of content. And that if you just start a YouTube channel and throw up some those vlogs like that, and those that is, without the goal of, you don't want to, doesn't necessarily want to become a YouTuber, but having that, now you have this whole other search engine. And like you said, it's like the most powerful search. People go to YouTube to search for literally everything. So if you have that content as well, that's just more ways of presenting you as an authority.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool.
So now we're going to talk a little bit more about megaphones. And people are looking at me like, what the hell does a megaphone have to do with this? Well, our megaphone happens to be social media, right? All it really doing is amplifying your message or messages to a wider audience with the hopes that no, not that they will convert based on your ad that you're serving them, but they will be bounced to your website where they can finally get the information that they do want. Now, of course, people are going to click through ads, and that's a whole different conversation. But the point is that you're putting your content out using your social platforms as a megaphone and an amplifier to the world, saying, this is kind of the stuff I'm interested in and talk about, and this is my area of expertise. And what you're hoping is that you're planting a seed in somebody's brain for them to come back to you. Now,
Mm.
what if you don't? All right, keep going, because at some point it will resonate. What's the difference between a no and a yes in buying, right? When somebody's looking to buy something, what's the difference between a no and a yes? Anybody know the answer to this one? I know these are very black and white kind of questions, but what is
I
the
think
difference?
I know the answer, but I want someone else to tell us. No?
One is
Desire?
Desire.
yes,
That's
one is
close,
maybe.
close. What's that, Ellen?
One is yes and one is maybe.
Getting warmer. Anybody? Anybody else? All right. I'll skip to the punchline. A no is just a yes waiting to happen.
Right.
The
I was gonna
difference is
say
time.
time. Yeah.
Time. The reason why I say it that way is because while you may not be of interest or your services may not be of interest to a particular client right then, you just
Right.
might have bad timing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll stay in front of them at some point. So, if they say, hey, don't ever call me again, okay, fine. But that's just one in a big, big stack, right? So what I'm trying to say here is that over time, with that megaphone, and you increase your authority and your content is constantly in front of them,
Mm-hmm.
eventually, when they are ready, you will be in a prime position. Why are you going to be in a prime position? Because they recognize you, because you've become familiar, right? Remember when we first started this and I said this is a long game and there are no magic bullets? I really meant it,
Yeah. So
right?
you're talking about, in a nutshell, you're talking about being consistent over a long period of time, which is the thing that
Yes.
nobody ever wants to hear, I think. And it's also, it's not even for me, it's not that I don't want to hear that. It is a little disheartening, I think, to people. But when you think about it, like eating a meal one small bite at a time, then it's like, okay, I can handle this, because it's actually being consistent every day is tough, but it's actually much easier than you think it is once you get into the flow of doing it. I remember when I started my first business, which is a brick and mortar business, and I didn't understand anything about advertising. Here's what I did. I took out a full page ad in the paper, right? In the local newspaper. And I made this really nice ad and blah, 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 and no one came. And then, or maybe I got like one or two calls, and I just was like, well, advertising doesn't work. This newspaper is a scam. And then it took me a little time to learn exactly what you're saying, kind of in the old school way, which
Mm-hmm.
is the ad needs to be in the paper every week for months, if not years, because then when the person is searching for what you offer, now you're there for them. So you're there
Yes.
in their time of need, right? Like you're
Mm-hmm.
never going to notice an ad for plugging a leaky tire until you have a tire with a nail in it. You don't care. You're not going to look for that. And the same thing for us. So when you think about consistency, I always go back to that, like presenting yourself as the authority on the socials in a consistent way, and how much that really does help.
Exactly. Right. And I often say this, especially about, my work, right, as a headshot photographer. Most people have no idea who I am until they need what I do. And then suddenly they realize that I'm all the way at the top of the rankings because I've put
Right.
myself there with consistency and time. Time is the number one thing that most people don't want to put into a business, and yet it is the most rewarding at the end.
Right.
So I'm going to move forward, and I segmented this off social media just slightly because I have found a lot of success on LinkedIn. And the reason why I found success on LinkedIn is because let's just cut to the chase. Twitter is a cesspool at this point. Instagram is not exactly, the hotbed of business activity. Most
Mhm.
people look on Instagram for photos. Now, you may find transactions and you may be able to build some relationships there. And I'm not poo-pooing that per se, but you're going to find people that are interested in business, that work with businesses and better relationships in a LinkedIn format,
Mhm.
right? And part of that has a lot to do with how they've set up their own algorithms. So basically, Pete and I, we're connected on there, but in a normal world, I will often go out of my way to not connect with other photographers. Not because I don't love them, right? I love every one of them. In fact, I've made a lot of inroads in this industry over the years, and that's great and wonderful. But if you want to connect with me in a different platform, I encourage that. LinkedIn is where I serve my content to the people that I want to work with, to the people that are in my network, the people that I want to connect with. I want those people seeing my content. I want to see their content. I want their second degree connections to see my stuff. But when I'm connected with Pete and we're talking on each other's posts, suddenly his people start seeing my stuff, which is kind of going to eat into his business, I would think, in some way. Not that we're right next to each other, we're about 3.5 hours away from each other, but the same principle occurs. If he's feeding information to my clientele, how does that benefit me?
Mm.
So I keep the world separate. Now, I know that there's some different opinions on that, but that's how I practice it, right? So every platform has its own purpose, and I put a lot more emphasis on LinkedIn for that reason, because of
How do
where
you
my clients are and who they are.
so how do you connect with how do you find and connect, and what's your strategy for, getting those qualified leads through LinkedIn? That, like, what do you do specifically to grow your own network so that these are potential clients that will wind up using your services at some point?
So I'm going to take a page out of Trevor Walker's book. Are you familiar with Trev?
Sure.
All right. If you guys don't know who Trevor Walker is, he's also another headshot photographer and a portrait photographer. He's based up in Canada, and he speaks about this quite a bit. He's got a theory called post, engage, connect. Before I actually met Trevor, I was doing it haphazardly. I mean, after all these years on Wall Street, I have a really, really nice Rolodex, basically, but I wasn't doing anything with it.
Mm,
So posting means putting up some information. What is information? It is not asking for a sale. Oh, you need a headshot, come and see me. That is not what we're after, right?
right.
Helpful information, informative. You're going to educate, you're going to engage, right? Keep it lighthearted, or if you prefer, keep it really professional. But what I would suggest when you're writing this content is that you're gearing it to them, not to you,
Mm,
and not to a sale. So you're going to post some stuff. Now, after you're done posting some stuff, you're going to engage with other people's stuff. So what does engagement look like? It's not just throwing a like or a heart on the post and calling it a day. You're going to say something thoughtful and
right.
engaging towards that post.
Right.
When you're thinking about other people, they're thinking about you, and you're going to see how that comes full circle in a few moments. So that's the engage concept. Then there's connect. You can do that one of two ways, right? You can just go ahead and hit connect on the profiles that you want to connect with and hope to God that they accept. The buzzkill here is that most people look at photographers and go, what the hell do I need a photographer for? No thanks, right?
Mhm.
But the overriding thing is that they're going to look at who your mutual connections are. They're going to look at your activity levels. They're going to see how well entrenched in the community you are. That often bodes well for me. The other way is you can put a message into that connection request, right? And you can phrase it any number of ways, but I would not ask for anything more than a connection. You might offer, yourself in some way, shape, or form, but make sure that you have some form of knowledge about who you're speaking to. Do a little bit of due diligence. Doesn't take much. Look at their profile, see the information they post, and talk about it, right? Help them. The best way to help yourself is to help somebody else.
Mm,
Karma, anybody?
yeah. Hey,
So
I want to
LinkedIn is yeah, go ahead. I'm
I want
sorry.
to throw one quick thing in about that because when it comes to, you said something so profound, like, well, maybe not profound, but important. But when
Profound would not be a way to say that.
I mean, yeah, profound doesn't work in my vocabulary. But you said about you have a Rolodex, right, of contacts from your old career. And
Mhm.
this is something that I speak about a lot with people because so many of us, there's very few of us who, as photographers, just said one day, said from college, I'm gonna be a photographer, right? Like, me, everyone knows my background is all in music. All of my formal education is in music. So your background is in finance. So you have all those connections. I know John in the group here, John Armato, has a similar background to me. All these musical contacts and colleges and academia. And I think that people think, well, now I started my headshot or my portrait business and I have to start from ground zero. But for me, it's been connecting with all of my current connections from my previous career, which I still have a foot in academia and I'm still doing teaching and stuff like that. So I'm still connected with that. But regardless of if you are or not, like, don't discount connecting with all of those people because you already know them. They already know you as an expert in the other field, especially if you have a good reputation in your field that you were previously in. Now they know you're doing this new venture. Like, a bulk of my clients are conductors, musicians, college professors. Like I get a lot of that business consistently because they know me, they see the work, I'm doing all that stuff. But that's a good place, I think, for people to start connecting if they're just not sure, instead of like doing like cold calling or cold emailing, which is also important, but that might be a place where we can think about starting, you know?
Now, I'm going to take that one step further. I would
Cool.
even ask some of those old colleagues if they can make introductions based on the people that you might look into their profile and who are they connected with.
Wow.
So you can absolutely leapfrog some of this stuff, right? If
Awesome.
people when people come into my studio, right, we're not friends, we're not just acquaintances anymore. We've become friends,
Right.
right? This is not exactly like a 5 minute see, and I'm never going to see them again,
Right.
right? I've actually worked with them for a few hours. We've gotten to know each other already. So I invite them to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't just care about what happens with that person. Now I'm thinking about who in their circle can I expand my circle into. And by that same token, I avail my network to those same people as well, because now I care about furthering their interests too.
Cool.
So, so LinkedIn is a really powerful tool, and I know we can really go hours on that alone.
Yeah.
But yeah, I took Post Engage Connect from Trevor, and I'm giving it fair credit where it's due.
Nice. Yeah, look
Um,
Trevor up. He really has a lot of great information on that.
100%. The next one I have here is something I believe absolutely wholeheartedly in, and I think that is one of the secrets to my success. Testimonials, reviews, right? The secret to my success was basically when I was in a car with my father. My father's a little older. He actually turned 88 this year. And this was a few years ago. And I said, Dad, I'm just having an incredible year. And he said, what do you owe that to? What do you attribute that success to? I said, when I first started, most people had no idea who I am, right? Like they just didn't know who I am, what I do, anything. But over the period of time, I've built a reputation. And that's easy to see in your reviews.
Hmm.
So I'm going to cut to the chase real fast and say your Google business profile reviews are exceptionally important. And here's why. There are a lot of different factors ranking for your local SEO. Local SEO is different than organic SEO that you would find on Google's search engine. Local SEO has more to do with your maps, right? Your proximity to other people, your location, your geography. And so when we can talk about some of those other factors, I'm going to cut to the chase on the reviews and say the quantity of reviews you have is a factor and the rating is a factor. Okay. Now, I don't actually know off the top of my head, and I have to dig into this, whether or not the actual words they use in those reviews are optimizable in some way or are used for ranking. So I won't really cover that too much. Let's just say that if you get good words in there, don't knock it. Throw a thumbs up and say high five to yourself. If not, strive to have people actually write some words in there.
Right.
I think that those reviews are so powerful. Google likes to say the threshold for an increase is 10. I found after 200, I went straight through the roof.
Good, because
And
I'm
now
at
I'm sitting at like
191.
556 or something like that.
Wait, how many reviews you have?
556, I think.
There's goals, people. That's amazing. Did you do that
Remember,
all in 1 year?
yes, I did, Pete. No,
Took
I've
a
been
little
at this
time,
for a
right?
long time,
Took
right?
some
That
time.
time is the answer people really want, but don't want to hear it, right? That it takes time to build a business this way.
Right.
But here's the thing is that those reviews are my reputation.
Mm,
These are what people have to say about the services I offer, the quality of my work, my personality, and how I work with them in the studio or even on location. These are exceptionally valuable. Warren Buffett, if you don't know who he is, also known as the Oracle of Omaha, really, really smart man. Warren Buffett said, it takes 20 years to build a reputation and
mm,
20 seconds to destroy one.
mm,
I am not going to let one shitty review destroy my reputation. So
mm.
I will never get one.
Wow.
Why? Because I will literally give somebody the shirt off my back because their experience is important to me. Literally, it really is that important to me. but I'm also guarding my reputation.
Mm.
All right. You only have one, so guard it and treat it well.
Wow.
Referrals. They are very important. Nobody leaves my studio without my pre-conceptualized shtick of saying my business is built on referrals and I would appreciate any you can offer to me.
Right.
Right. Now, how you phrase that, how you go about doing that, totally up to you. That's based on your rapport. But don't sleep on asking for them, because if you
Right.
don't ask, the answer is always no.
And they don't know. That's the other thing. People don't understand that unless they're a business owner themselves, the power of referrals. Referral,
Mm-hmm.
like you said there is no magic bullet to growing a business, and it's true. But there is a magic bullet to getting a client with working without having to work for it at all, and that's the referral. Because when people refer you, it's basically them telling their friends exactly what they did, exactly what they experienced. So then when they call you, I'll have calls from people like that. Oh yeah, and I know we do this right, and then this happens, and they already are sold on the experience and on you. So yeah, that's something I've been doing more recently, which is asking for the referral because they just don't know. It's they might refer you, but and I've had I've seen an uptick in my own bookings because I've been asking. So that's brilliant, man. I think that's so important.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that. I just want to jump to this quick question here. Julie, you look like you're asking me if I offer incentives. I typically don't, right? I mean, what's the incentive to somebody else to give me a referral, right? Basically, what they're saying is that somebody else could really use what I'm doing, right? And they're going to benefit from this experience, but I should cough up something else for them to work with me.
Mm,
Right. To me, that doesn't make a great deal of sense. Of course, you could, but I'm going to bring this a little bit further back to the reviews for a second. Please do not ever incentivize a review.
right,
Never, ever, ever incentivize a review. Don't pay for one. Don't offer anything in exchange for one. It's either out of the goodness of their own heart or it's not at all.
right.
Okay. And we could talk about ways in which I get them. Literally every human being in my studio, I will ask. And as long as they didn't have an absolutely atrocious experience, which never happens, but everybody gets the same ask. Basically, real quick, I put it on like cardstock. It's got a QR code. Say, look, hit this with your phone. They scan the QR code. It takes a brief moment because cell service in my area is absolute shit. It's important that when people are in your studio, they are not tied to your Wi-Fi.
Right.
No Wi-Fi for clients. And here's why. Because if they were attached to your Wi-Fi and giving you a review, Google will think that you're giving yourself a review. Yeah, Google can do that. I know. It's kind of crazy. So use their own cell service. They'll give you the review. So basically, QR code scans goes right to the Google review page. And then I say, please feel free to drop me a 5-star Google review if you think I'm worthy of it. And also write some words on there. At that point, I've already decided I am walking away from my desk. Now in my studio, I do some fun stuff. Like right after the session, I'll pull out a Fuji Instax Polaroid kind of thing. I make a photo of it. They've already kind of given me like a signature. This way I can tell them, this way I knew you before you were famous. I
Mm,
put that on a cork board,
that's cool.
actually in like my changing room. And so what happens is while they're writing the review, now they have space to think. They're under no pressure at that point. I have walked away. I'm hanging up their photo. I'm turning the lights off. I'm doing anything except getting up in their grill.
Mm,
Okay. They have space. They've left the review, and that's the end of that. Right. Make it easy for them. The easier you make it, the more you're going to get.
I
Okay.
love it.
So reviews are important and referrals are just as important. And that's about the time I ask for those referrals.
Hmm.
And the other thing, if you are a location shooter, what I mean by that is in my world headshots, of course, I go on location with companies. I don't know how many of you actually do this kind of stuff, but if you don't, bear with me. It might be applicable in some other way. But if this is the kind of stuff you do, then what I tell people, even though I can do a variety of different setups on location, I have my go-to kit, right? And I actually have a total second set of the same kit without column stands, with air cushion stands, sitting actually on the other side of those doors. Okay. Why? Because I could just throw it in my car and go. I don't have to unload my studio in any way.
Right.
So what I tell people while they're in the studio, after I've asked for the referral, after they've given me the review, I tell them, hey, just on the off chance you might know somebody that works in a corporate environment and they can't really spend the time coming to the studio, just so you're aware, I have a whole other set of this equipment here that I can actually take on location and serve a much larger group, which actually might help a whole lot of people. And you can describe your services at that point because you never know who you're planting a seed with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the important part about it. Marketing is not here. I've put up an advertisement. Now I'm going to have some dollars come in. A lot of this is just planting seeds over the long game, right? Which actually comes down to my next point. I love how this is just flowing, Pete.
Cool,
This
man.
is good.
This is gold. I love
We're
it.
on to networking, right? Now, these days we have all these digital environments, and most people come onto Zoom and they're like, okay, I'm networking. And we have plenty of them. What I like to do is I actually like when I have the time, and I say that because if you haven't figured out already, I do look after that. My father, he is 88, and it's getting more and more difficult to do all of the things.
Mm.
So when I can, I go to these networking meetings for a variety of different organizations. And what I'm looking to do at that point is not tell them what I do. I'm looking to make friends and I'm looking to shake hands. That's it. All I want to do is shake some hands, put my eyes on their eyes, and let them know that I am who I am. That's it. Not to say I am a headshot photographer and this is what I do and this is what I can do for you, but rather, my name is Richard Wayne. What's yours? Tell me about yourself. Right? I want them to talk. The most beautiful word in the English language, and possibly in other languages too, is that person's first name. That's always going to be the magic trick, their name. So address them. Let them talk about themselves. Take an interest in it. Remember that stuff. I remember years ago on Wall Street, I was working with one of my colleagues. He was an institutional trader. I was an analyst. And all we did was listen to the fact that the guy owned a grill and he was looking forward to grilling that weekend. This was like on a Monday. That was the whole thing. I went online. I bought him some fancy ass Brookstone grill brush. I pocketed 60 grand that day. It cost me 25 bucks.
Right.
Right. It was a wonderful thing. Why? Because I took an interest in what the guy was doing. I was thinking about him. Right. So that's my purpose in networking, is to take some interest in other people. And hopefully, if they're in the same brain as I am, they'll be thinking about me at some point too. All right.
Right.
Another way I exercise that same thing is caring about other people. How many of you use model release forms? A couple of you? Okay. How many of you actually have them fill them out with something more than just their signature? Do you collect other information, address, date of birth, anything like that? Let me be the first to tell you the model release is completely useless. All right, it doesn't really serve any purpose. When I click that shutter, I own the picture anyway, so it doesn't really matter unless they've done some form of a buyout. So that's meaningless, right? All I'm telling them is that I basically want their information and they have no idea what for. And then I send them a physical birthday card, like an old fart with a pen. I literally handwrite every birthday card and I send them every year. And it's not really something, massive. It's not a big project, right? You keep the information up to date as best you can. For the most part, it's warmest wishes for a happy birthday. But if you have personal details about them that you'd like to incorporate, do that. All right. Let them know that they are on your mind. That's all. Right. You're just thinking about them. That too has paid dividends for me.
Wow.
Does that make sense to you guys? Or is that kind of like, oh, my mind is blown? Or is that, that's kind of weak? Where are we in that? Because I'm making money on it. And if you don't want to do that, that's okay.
Well, I think it's important to delineate, like, this is called small business marketing, right? This is like when you're a solopreneur, and you're the face of your business, I think a lot of people want to do some kind of strategy that they get from looking at like what a mega global corporation does, and then they just
Yeah.
think, well, I'm just going to do this, and it comes off like there's so many times where I'll see other photographers advertising their wares, and it just comes off so phony, and it's
Mhm.
not genuine, and it's like as the kids say, it's cringe, you know. And I think it's because we sometimes we want to think like, well, this I just have to market it, and it's not the marketing that we do. Sure, there's overlap and there's similarities. There's smart things to do for any business, I think, marketing. But what you're talking about is really people again, that we're in a business that is connecting with people. If you're trying to sell a product, sure, that's very different marketing, but you're trying to connect with people. um
Yes,
so that's how
very
I
much
look at
so.
it anyway. And I feel like everything you're
Well,
talking about is the stuff that is like how to genuinely connect with people, genuinely impact their world, genuinely making their businesses better, and like their personal lives better in a lot of times too, because often this is the first photo in 30, 40, 50 years that you might click the shutter on of this person, that might be the first photo that they've seen that they actually feel good about. And so
yes.
I feel like it's honestly a big responsibility we have. And we shouldn't take that lightly and just be flippant about it. But that's a side issue. But like, so you're really doing something important is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think that photography, no matter what genre, other than perhaps food and bev, right? Or like, still life kind of stuff, I think that it's a full contact sport. It
Mm,
is. You have to be kind of in the same vein as your clients. You have to think along those lines and care about them.
right.
If you don't, well, then you're probably not going to develop much of a connection with them. So your pictures might suffer for it, but so will the sales process,
Yeah. People
right?
can smell if you're is it ungenuine? Is that the right word? If you're not
Disingenuous.
disingenuous, they can smell that through the computer just by what you post and how you present yourself. They don't even need to be in a room with you. So if you're not genuine, it comes across so strongly as if you are genuine, and like if all you
Mhm.
care about is like if you just think about your potential client as like a sponge for you to squeeze every cent out of, you're in the wrong business, because that's not a long-term strategy for being successful in this business. Because like you said, Rich, your reputation will precede you, whatever it is. And the more if you treat your clients like that, and you're not doing this other kind of really caring about them stuff that we've been talking about that today, you're eventually that you'll get to a tipping point where that becomes your people just kind of know, oh yeah, that's the expensive person, and there's no real reason to go to them. They just want to squeeze you for money. And that's not at all what you're talking about.
No, humans have an incredibly sensitive bullshit meter. They know when you're trying to pull the wool over their eyes.
Mm,
They know when you're trying to be less than, I guess, less than upstanding would be the word I'm looking for.
mm,
So don't do it. That's all. Be
right,
authentic, be yourself, but also let them be them too. Give
right.
them that space and courtesy.
And the little
In the
things.
Yeah,
Oh,
go
I'm
ahead. I'm
sorry. I was
sorry.
just gonna say, like the little things you do in each individual session will add up. So, like going the extra mile in that session, like, you know, sometimes I'll have a client want me to re-edit something, and I could be I had a client recently who she just they liked the photo, they liked the photos they purchased, but then there was one that when they looked at it at home, and probably like the husband looked at it or the whoever, I'm just not happy with this one. Now I could have just said, well, if you want me to edit another one, here's the fee, and that's fine by me, blah, blah,
Mhm.
blah. But you know what? I'm thinking long term, and I could have done that. And then chances are she would have just said, no, never mind. And then that would have been the end of that relationship. But I said to her, look, my main goal is for you to be happy with these images. Okay. So I sent her a small proof gallery. I said, here's the other ones we liked. Pick which one you want, and I'll edit it on me. and I'm happy to do so. And then if you want any others, let me know. And then if you want more, then you could just pay my regular editing fee. Now, then I got a text from this lady the other day. I keep getting texts from her how much she loves the photos. She loves me. I've been referring you to all my friends and all this kind of stuff. So like those like making those small decisions and thinking like the golden rule, right? What would you want? If you were them, what would you want this person to do? That's going to add up over the long term when it comes to your overall bottom line, you know?
I would like to emphasize something that I think that you said, Pete, and I'm going to paraphrase it a little differently, but the concept is still accurate. Treat people the way you would like to be treated as a consumer.
Exactly.
Okay. So I was thinking about this, the best way that I could possibly explain something like pricing, for instance, right? Not that I want to go into super depth at this juncture, but think about this for a second. Under the Bush 2, George Bush 2 administration, remember when right after 9/11 we had, what was it after 9/11? Whenever we had the increase in jet fuel in terms of price, right? Notice when they got the baggage fees started getting tacked on to your tickets, right? So now we're paying 30 some odd dollars per bags. Did everybody remember when that happened?
Yeah.
And everybody went, well, that's because of the increase in cost in jet fuel. And we started, well, we don't really have a choice. But then jet fuel came down in price, and these airlines looked at it like it was another line item of revenue.
Right.
How come nobody was outraged? Nobody cared. We became totally callous to the idea that we're suddenly spending more money than we ever did before. But where was the outrage? And yet, when people need a photographer, they're like, wow, you cost that much?
Right.
Right? Where's the outrage? Right? How come we're not outraged? So, in other words, what I'm basically saying is treat other people the way you want to be treated as a consumer. And I think that'll pay dividends. I'm not trying to say charge less, charge more. What I'm just saying is that when you are a consumer, you expect to be treated a certain way, and you expect certain ethical and moral practices, and you expect a certain level of experience, meaning the quality of the experience that you have. I would give them that and
So
more.
we're up on a little over an hour. Do you want to talk a little bit about pricing? Because that was the other topic that I wanted to at least touch
Sure.
on. We don't have to go into detail, but I know
Yeah,
you got to leave soon, so I'd like to.
I have like 45 minutes.
Oh, cool. All right. So I think unless there's something else that you want to go over.
Well, let
Um,
me ask if anybody has any questions at this point, because if we're
yeah,
going to switch
good idea.
topics, I'd rather make sure we get all the questions answered.
Yeah,
And I know we
just
have a lot of questions here, right, guys?
jump on in if you have a question, something you want us to talk about. You can unmute yourself and just ask if you want, or throw it in the chat. All right. Well, let's keep going. And then if someone has a question, there we go. If you can talk a little about quotes and group pricing. Okay. So
Sure.
I don't tend to win
Okay.
many gigs with groups. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Ishpal with
welcome
the
to the
great
rest of the world,
questions
man.
today. I know.
Yeah,
It's true. It's
welcome
true.
to the rest of the world.
Dude, we've all
Um,
been there. That's the first thing, right? So
yeah.
don't feel bad. So let's do it. Let's get into pricing. We could start there if you want.
Okay.
But you
Ha- Okay.
go
I got
go for
this.
it. You got
Let's
it.
do it. Okay. How many of you, by a show of hands or unmute or whatever, have ever asked somebody else what you should charge for X project or whatever? Okay. And I'm sure they probably gave you some form of numbers. Yes? Any numbers mentioned in those responses?
I've
Now,
had
how
that.
many of
Yes.
those people that you asked actually have intimate knowledge of your business, your operations, your books, your financials? How many of them know any of that?
Goose egg.
So at what point is any of that information valuable to you? Right. So what I'm saying here is that unless you're talking to your accountant, your spouse, perhaps, who might actually know the books, if they have no idea what it takes to operate your business in your area, your demographic, with your workflow and your moving money in terms of expenses and income, if they don't have knowledge of that, then they should shut up very quickly. All right. There's nothing, not a single thing those people should say. All right. I do not care if they are the most educated person in the world. I don't care how much money they make. I don't care what they drive. I don't care where they live. I don't care who the hell they are. They have nothing to say about it. And the reason why is because nobody can tell you that you should charge X if they don't understand where your money is going in and out of your business. Okay. So if you haven't divulged your books to them, they can't talk about it. So that's a really, really direct way of saying, I want you to know your numbers. You should dive into your own finances, okay, for your business, okay, and literally list out what it takes expense wise to keep your business afloat. I have to pay for these things. I have to pay for this. I have to pay for this. And I have to pay for this. Okay, now you've got an understanding of where your money's going on a monthly and yearly basis. And you could break that up any which way you want, okay, from day to day, week to week, month to month. I tend to go for every month and every year. Okay. Once you understand that, now we have to figure out how much money it takes to substantiate those expenses. How much does your business need to bring in to substantiate those expenses? Now, somewhere in there, we must incorporate paying yourself. Now, you could do that in a couple of different ways. You can take a draw and pay yourself a salary. You could do that. Or if you're like me, you just kind of like, that's mine anyway, because I've already paid for it, right? I don't take a salary. I take what's in there because I earned it. It's all income. So I have to declare it for taxation purposes anyway. That's all income. So that to me, that doesn't necessarily move the needle one way or another. But what I do is I say to myself, okay, last year I made X. This year, loftier goal. I need to make this. Now, that number, let's just say arbitrarily let's just say it's $250,000. That's what I want to put into my pocket by year end in total. That becomes a yearly expense in essence for your business. Does everybody understand that? That salary is an expense of the business. If so, now you have to make that much more in revenue to offset all of those expenses. When they offset even, right? There's no disparity whatsoever. You are at a break-even point. It's not the worst place to be. You're not losing money, but you're also not growing your business either. Because now you don't have a whole lot of money left in that operating account to actually grow, to increase your capacity, replace your equipment, do other things, right? So break even, not a terrible place to be, but not a great place to be. The idea is to have positive net operating income. Okay. In other words, you're bringing in more money than you're spending. So how do you do that? You have to break it down to a couple of different factors. Number one, how many sessions do you intend to shoot per day? How many billable days per year are you working? What I mean by that, when I say billable days, when we're on vacation, and I don't know about you, but I like to take at least 2 weeks a year, right? Sometimes I don't get to it, but I like to. There's no way I'm working those 2 weeks. So suddenly 52 weeks a year becomes 50, right? So if I only have 50 weeks a year to bill, I have now reduced the time frame that I have. So you have to do a little bit of math and jockeying to figure out basically how much you need to earn at every session. I'm sure with a little basic division, we can get there. I actually set up that model in 2016 to determine that. It's ugly. It's very ugly, and I need to work on it, but it does the same thing. It just does some basic mathematics for you. So if you're astute enough to figure out that your income needs to be whatever you determine it needs to be, you can do the division based on your billable hours, or not hours, I'm sorry, billable work days and sessions to get down to how much you should charge per session. Now, that's pure math. Let me tell you what actually happens in the world. All right. This is where experience comes into play. Remember when I was saying that I failed a lot in my career and that it takes a long time to build a good business? It's proven fact that in the first 2 to 5 years, most businesses will fail. All right. And most of them will fail for a variety of much different reasons, but mostly because of experience.
Mm,
Okay. And so what's happening here is that if you can make it past the 2 to 5 years, you start learning something about your demographics. Okay. You start learning about the economics in play. You understand things like price elasticity and economies of scale. Okay. Now, this is a little bit into the weeds on the economics of things, but if you understand the people around you, then you probably understand how much people are willing to pay for certain things in your area. So while your mathematics may say, I require XYZ per session at minimum, you have to make sure that your demographic can actually afford that. So as Pete mentioned at the beginning of this Zoom here, I'm from New York City. I'm used to a very different lifestyle than I currently live. And the reason why that is because I live 3.5 hours away in the heart of Amish country in Pennsylvania. Okay. And when I say the heart of Amish country, it's not really, I'm in a suburban area, but the county at large is heavily Amish, and the cost of living is significantly lower than it is in New York. Okay. So this is the principle of economies of scale. If I made $100,000 in New York City, suddenly down here, that's worth about 50. It's just not worth that much. Oh, I'm sorry. I take it back. The other way around. It's
other way
probably
around.
closer to
Yeah.
200. But if I took that 100,000 out of Lancaster and I moved it into New York, it's worth half
Right.
because expenses are significantly greater. And so what you have is the principle that a dollar is not a dollar everywhere you go. That's why we can't speak in real numbers with people that aren't from our own area.
Mm,
Contrary to anything you might hear anywhere else, people simply cannot relate because this $20 right here is meaningless to somebody in New York. This will buy them a cup of coffee. Here goes a lot further. I could buy dinner for two on this,
mm-hmm.
right? And so that's my point. So when you think about your pricing, think about the people you're serving and what they can afford. And if you need that information, there's this little thing called the US Census report. It's an
Yes.
interesting report. You can always find information if you want, but that's where I would start. Then you can fine tune your pricing. So when I started, I started at $125 for a session. There was no per image fee. I started at $125. Okay. Now here I am the most expensive photographer in the area. Okay. And that didn't just happen by, happenstance. It took time to build. If you've got a great reputation, you've got the reviews, you've got the work, slowly and gradually you will get people accustomed to higher prices.
Right.
I would not start with a shock and awe campaign, but I
Right.
would start with understanding who those people are and what they can afford.
Well, and I think so. I think this is all very, very important. Like knowing your market, of course. Yeah, for sure. Right. Like, and striving to be the most expensive option in your area, I think is a great goal to have. As long as you, like you said, you do the homework, you know what that means in your area, because it's going to mean
Mhm.
completely different things to all of us depending on where we live. But the other thing that I always say in my coaching group is you got to be able to back it up. So
Mhm.
like if you look at Rich's work, not just the photos he creates, but obviously the way he deals with his clients, the way his professionalism on site with large companies, knowing all of this stuff together, but and then let's just do, so we're talking about all of that being able to back up the price, but also the work I want to just focus on for a second, because I think there's so many times where you'll see like photographers, like I was getting these Instagram ads where it was like this guy, and he's like, I make 200 grand a year with my camera and I'm not even a great photographer. And I just shake my head at that stuff, because first of all, what a terrible goal to strive towards. And if you are making 200 grand and you're not even a good photographer, imagine if you were good, you'd be making 500 possibly. So I think that, um, people want, like you said, like some people want to start out and they just, well, I'm just going to just going to have this outrageous price. But if you can't back it up, you're going to trick, you'll trick some people for a certain amount of time, but you're not going to be long term. You will not be in business, because you're only going to be able to fool a certain number of people. Like you can't just you can't just bypass actually being good at what you do. And I'm not saying you have to be, the greatest photographer in the world, but you do have to be good at what you do. You have to be solid in your skills, and then in all of this other stuff too.
Absolutely. I think that's really important, actually. Not just being good, but being professional about it.
Right.
Right. I think that's really important. Why do people hire professionals, guys? Anybody?
Because they're consistent.
That's one reason.
That's a big one.
Because they're too lazy to do it themselves.
Ellen, if they did it themselves, we'd be out of a job.
I know.
No, actually,
I was-
I'll think better of that. We wouldn't be out of a job. Actually, it might actually help us a whole lot more than you think. And the reason why I bring up the idea of being professional, or why do people hire professionals? They either can't do what they want to do. They've got this vision in their mind and can't execute it, right? They don't know what they want, and they're going to rely on somebody that knows better. Somebody has skill, experience, they're good, as Pete was just saying. There are a lot of different reasons to hire a professional. What's the number one reason to not hire a professional? I know. I look at all these quizzical looking faces on this screen, and it is hysterical. I'm sorry, guys. I'm having a laugh at your expense. The number one reason to not hire a professional is because we're bloody expensive, guys.
Yeah.
We're too expensive for people, right? And they will try to juice us for all that we're worth to try to get their money out of it, right? Case in point, I had a client I'm working with. I'm still working with them for some silly reason. I photographed them 3 years ago. The whole damn team. I photographed 16 of them. 3 years later, after I added 2 new hires into their work, suddenly all the other 16 people don't look right. Can you make it look more natural? What does that mean? Right? There's always something.
Oh man.
So 16 different revisions, blah, 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 blah. This is just and by the way, nothing looked unnatural. This is just a point that they're trying to make, that I am expensive and they're going to try to get as much out of me as humanly possible.
Right.
Right. So long and short of it, right? When it comes to pricing yourselves, you're going to price yourself as a professional because you are offering professional services. Love the hat, Josh. Love it. I've got one of those. Anyway, sorry. You're a professional. You're going to charge for professional services. That's really important. But you're also going to pay attention to what that demographic can absorb. Okay, that's so important. If you don't know, please do not just willy-nilly throw some pricing on the screen. Make sure you're justifying your expenses and you're getting the money into your pocket so that you can live the lifestyle that you want to live and take care of the things that are important. Your
Right.
spouse, your family, your children. Thankfully for what I do, I'm able to send my 2 kids off to college, one in grad school, one in undergrad. I've got the life I want to live, right? So I'm substantiated, but it didn't come without researching what my market can absorb. Okay, so pricing is important. I want to go into this group pricing thing, Pete, because I think it's really important.
Yeah, go for it.
Ishpal, I'm going to tell you 100%, right? Last year and years in the past, I was about 50-50, maybe 60-40 split between in studio and on location. This year, I've had 2 location gigs all year. Okay. You are not the only person feeling that, but there are a number of reasons why. Okay. And in order to understand why we're not booking the kind of gigs that we want to understand, we have to understand the environment in which we live. Okay. Now, this is not a political thing, but it is an economic one. Inflation is a very real thing. Okay. Inflation just means that the value of the dollar has come down and we have to put more money to work because this just isn't worth what it used to be worth. We're inflating the dollar. There's a lot more supply. So what has to happen, right, is people say, now it's going to cost me more to get the same services I normally would. We live in a normal environment of inflation of about 2%, give or take. That's normal and it's always there. And it's been a little bit higher, right? As of now, it's a little bit lower than it used to be, but we're about a little higher than 2 to 3%, something like that. So that's one possible reason. The other reason is that we have not done a good enough job of explaining what the value that we bring is, what problems we're solving. What we're so busy trying to do is say, yeah, we'll charge this to do all the things you want to do. You go in for a day, you come out with $3,000 or something along those lines. And the quality is just like you're going in for a high school photo, right? So what's happening is you've got cheaper clients because they don't either know what things should cost. There's a lack of education there, right? Some of them do what I call and what we used to call on Wall Street something called mark to market. How many of you have ever received a phone call saying, "Hey, I just want to know what you would price this at and how much you would charge for this kind of work?" And we're just doing some research and we've got calls out to other people,
All the
right?
time.
What they're trying to figure out is where everybody falls in the market because they don't understand it. All right. And it's hard as hell to say, well, you're never going to be able to make that comparison. They think they will. Anybody know, even though Pete and I both shoot headshots, so does Andrew over there, Josh over there, right? Hector and John. And Ellen, of course. I don't know if everybody does that, but to a consumer, our work all looks the same. We're commoditized instantly. And yet we work differently. Our workflows are different. Our deliverables are different. How we interact and the quality of our experience with your teams or their teams are different. And yet, headshot photo is headshot photo. This is where Ishpal's priced, so I should be priced similarly. And they're trying to commoditize us, but we cannot compare an apple to an orange. So our job is to educate them on that. You have to qualify these people, Ishpal. And what I mean by that, beyond what's your budget, because most of those people that are making that call are not going to know their budget because they're probably somebody a little lower on the totem pole that have to report back to an upper management of some sort, right? And they'll make a decision at that point. But right, instead of qualifying with budget, start with this. What's important to you in this project? Is it time? How fast can it get done? Is it quality of the work? Is it the experience that your team is likely to have with me? Or is it in fact price? What is most important, right? Once you understand what's important to them, you can kind of have that conversation with them and figure out how best to serve their needs, right? Address problems they didn't even know they had. Like I get phone calls all the time from people saying, look, in fact, this was yesterday. They need 18 people photographed on site and they have exactly 1 hour to do it in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What's the problem? Just tell me what color background you want to go with and let me do my thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is easy peasy because we do it all the time. And a lot of that comes down to workflow and efficiency, which unfortunately is not developed overnight. But once you get the hang of it, this moves pretty quickly. So understand their problems and the things they're trying to address. You take the logistics off their plate because your decision makers don't want to deal with this crap. All they want to know is when are you coming and when can they have their stuff back? Make it easy on them, right? The easier you make it on them, the easier it is to sell that type of service. Does that make sense?
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. So I'm not telling you that's instantly going to tick up your bookings. It's just not. All right. This is very much an ebb and flow thing. And so welcome all of you to the world of entrepreneurship, where some months you're going to launch and you're going to be in money hand over fist and you're making it rain up in here and all that stuff. And then there are going to be months that you're just down in the trenches. It happens. That is the nature of being in business. And nobody can guarantee that somebody else is going to make a purchase from you at any point. Right? So the best thing that we can do is be prepared for those instances. Right? Everybody remembers what COVID was like. We were all in our house. We were not earning. Right? I'm sure a lot of people felt some pain. We work our asses off for those moments to weather those moments. right? So it's an ebb and flow thing. So don't think that this is the end of location jobs. It's not. But you need to separate yourself. You need to be a differentiator. Bring something to the table that nobody else is. Okay.
Hey, Rich.
It might, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna add real quick that it also is like the way you present your pricing. Like for me, I know that the more simple my pricing is, the more people will book. Because I feel like sometimes with location gigs, we can get lost in like all these like line items. So I try, the more that I do this, I find that keeping it simple. And sometimes I don't even have like a separate location fee. I'll just have, if it's X amount of people, up to X amount of people, it's X per head and includes retouching. I like, so depending, and for me, it also depends on like how big the job is, where the job is, what the sense I get from the person is. And I'm always going to talk to them on the phone, and I'm never going to quote on the phone. I always tell them, well, I want to get information. Let's chat. And then I like to put the quote in an email just so there's no miscommunication about it. I always like to have that in writing. But I think like those kinds of strategies have helped me, like because when I first started I would have like it would be really complicated, so people again they don't want a diner menu to try and figure out like getting a headshot. They just want it to be simple. So but go on, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, for my location work, I have a form on my website. It's not an opt-in. I don't really give a crap about the information that they give me. It's just so I can reach back out to them.
Right,
But when I do, the first move I make is to a phone. Okay.
exactly.
I am picking up a phone as soon as I see that because I want to have a conversation and introduce myself. I will, of course, back up those conversations with emails and documenting. We discussed this. These were your needs. This is what I can do for you. And I solve as many problems as I think I possibly can in those words.
Right.
Okay. Then at that point, we leave it up to fate, right? Because we don't really have any sway over the decision making process. But I will tell you the one tactic I do implement that not many other people that I'm aware of do. And I always ask them for what we call last look. Okay. And what last look is I've provided you information. I might be your first call. I said, yeah, no, I totally understand that you're going to go out and do your research. You're probably going to make some other phone calls. Listen, I'd love to help you. Okay. I'd love to be a really great solution to your problem. So if you've gotten all the information that you think you need, if you would give me a call back or let me know when you'd like to speak again, I'd like to see if I can address your needs in a better way based on the information that you have.
Mm, that's great.
Right? It's last look. It's saying, here, call me back. Maybe I can do better than the information that you've just received.
Right.
Let's also be honest that we've probably given our really best crack at that point, but it doesn't ever hurt to see if maybe there's some wiggle room there. Right? Oh, hey, you know what, Rich, you're about $3,000 more expensive than we want to, play with here. All right, well, if I could do this and maybe increase the value a little bit and maybe meet you halfway, all right, maybe I can hack $1,000 off that. Right? Maybe there's something to be had on those location gigs. I'm not big on haggling, right? I don't like when people haggle with me. I don't really want to haggle with them. But by that same token, I'd like to make a deal that makes sense for my pocket and for them. All right. So don't hesitate to ask for a last look. Just do it in your own way.
Cool.
I hope that answers the question.
I think so, yeah, because Yeet threw in there, what's a good strategy to help demonstrate the value of your services? But I think we've kind of addressed that.
Yeah, you've got to show it, not just talk about it. But
Mhm.
if you're going to have anybody talk about it, let it happen through your reviews. And by the way, reviews are not just meant for Google Business Profile. I literally take those reviews, and if they make sense, I'll put them on my website. If they, and I don't just mean if they make sense in English, but I mean if they serve the purpose that I'm trying to reinforce in the way of information on the site. For instance, one thing I used to do, and I have to double check if I still have this going on, but on my site under pricing, I might have something that's price related in the way of a review. Or if it's going to prove another point that I'm trying to serve, I'll use that review that proves the point that I'm trying to make. It's a reinforcing tool. But also I'll deploy them elsewhere. One of the things that I'm kind of I like to have a little bit of fun with is I'll take a really great review, I'll put it up on Instagram stories, And I like the little GIF with like Wayne from Wayne's World because my last name and all that, and say, like that. And I'll just post that review. Right. So
Right.
I'll repurpose them there. I put them on LinkedIn. Let people know what the experience is. Somebody literally once compared me to Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo and Steve Jobs, or something like that. It was crazy. And I went, okay, man, you lay off the
I'll take
drugs,
it.
but I appreciate it. Right. Um, I mean, that's cool. But remember, somebody else screaming from the rooftops about you is worth way more than you screaming for yourself. So implement those types of techniques. In fact, if you have a review from somebody about your location gigs, right? Maybe throw something like that into the contact information, into the email that you have with them or something. You
Mm,
know, if you've participated in something like 10,000 headshots, there's video content here. We're newsworthy, right? There are other things to use to prove the point that you can provide more than just something for money. You've got to increase your value. Your value proposition has to be so much stronger. The economic principle that I think that most people forget is that something is only worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. And people will buy when the value of what you offer exceeds the cost.
mm,
And that's all perception. And that's only something that you can affect and they have to perceive.
right.
Again, you know your people better than I do.
Cool.
I hope that helps. Did
Yeah, it
that
did.
help? Or did I just like totally speak out of my rear end for a while?
It
No,
helped.
man. This is awesome. Thank you.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
it's 11:40 now. Do you want to take a couple more questions? If anyone has any questions for us, what would you like to do?
Yeah, I'm here for 20 minutes more. Unfortunately, I have to go because my father's in physical therapy, and so I have some work and then I've got to take him to PT. So I'm happy to be here for 20 minutes more. If you guys want to have some questions thrown at me, I'm good to take them.
Does anyone have any questions that we haven't addressed or that you'd like us to talk more about?
I'm sorry, I've been taking all your time today.
Go ahead.
There, how do we stay ahead of curve for marketing our services? Say a peak season is about to come. We know that it's peak corporate season or like, something like that. Where do we start before and how do we market ourselves then?
Sure. So the number one thing I think that folks tend to overlook is the value of a calendar. Calendars are helpful.
Mm,
Not just calendars, but sometimes I even use like these notebooks, right? We go to these conferences, we get notebooks. I live by these things. I make notes of all the things that are kind of circulating in my brain because I just don't have the capacity to hold on to it all. So it's got to be in front of me. Let's say we've got Christmas coming up, and here we are in September. I am sure that people are going to be looking to do Christmas sessions. Now would be a good time to be talking about that. In fact, it might have been a good time last month too, right? So when you know that these types of things are coming up, now I can't tell you that that's definitely a thing for you, right? Because I don't know. I don't know what business lines you're trying to get into here. But if that's kind of the idea of what you're thinking, put it on the calendar. Also, remember, you're not just dealing with the Christmas rush, right? You're going to start planning that months in advance. So what I would do is say, okay, now I've got this thing I'm doing starting like a quarter, maybe 4 months, 5 months before, something like that. Okay, Christmas mini sessions, just off the top of my head. What is involved in that? Right? What is it that people need to hear from you to do that? Okay. Who do you need to speak to? All right. So you're probably not going to be speaking to your 80-year-old neighbor who's a widower, right? That's probably not who you're going to talk to. You're probably going to be talking to families. So now you're isolating and kind of figuring out who that market is. Okay. Now, most of the things I do are not paid advertising. Why? Because I don't believe in doing something like that if I can do it on my own. That's just the truth. The money's better off in my pocket instead of down a black hole. So that's not to say that ads are a bad thing. There are certainly good ways to do them. I'm just not really a fan of them and I'm not a pro at it. So I don't really talk about it. So I would think about things like content creation, number one. I would think about that LinkedIn connection base and who they're connected with. Most of these people probably have families. They're probably in your area. They're probably people in your backyard. Get the word out. Use your megaphone. Your social profiles are your megaphone. Use that stuff. Design, dare I say, packages or services that make sense for the money that you want to collect at a price point that people are willing to pay. Right? If that's not your core business line, then it's just kind of gravy on the table, isn't it? Right? So I would take it. Right? It just depends on what you're going to offer. But I would certainly use your avenues, your existing avenues, and all of this stuff that we just covered still apply, provided that's the avenue you want to go down. Does that make sense? Also, one other thing, if you've not played with your Google business profile at all, under your posts, your updates, you have 3 different types of posts you can make. You can make like an update post on what's going on in your business. I tend to use those a lot. You can make an offer like 50% off, blah, blah, blah. Or you can create an event. And it sounds like what you want to do is create an event, and that's going to serve a local market. So that's something you probably want to do. When you make an update or even upload pictures, just make sure everything is unique. Okay. In other words, if you've already uploaded a photo to Google Business Profile in any way, you cannot use it again. Find a new photo, upload it to that update. Does that make sense? Everything must be unique. If it is not, Google is going to say, well, you're purposely duplicating your content. We don't like that. We're going to remove it. And multiple occurrences of having to do that will give you kind of a slap on the wrist from Google. So you don't want that. Right. So make sure your content is unique and utilize those types of things. Utilize your geography and your proximity to human beings.
Mm.
And then make sure you get reviews when you're done.
And don't be afraid to cold email. Like this is still a valid way that you can grow your business. And I remember when I first started and I had no clients, I would just spend an hour a day and just researching all the local financial firms in my area, all the local law firms, all the local doctor offices, whatever. And I made a nice form letter and I would go to these websites, try and find someone who was either the boss or maybe someone high up. If a lot of times you can find company emails right on their website. And I would just email the people and I was shocked by how many people got back to me. And out of the people who got back to me, if I sent out 100 emails, I would say I would get at least 4 or 5 responses and then maybe 1 client out of it. So that to me, an hour of my time or we waste so much time scrolling and doing all this stuff. So I think if you're feeling like you want to just grow, that's a very valid way of doing it. It's something that you will get some kind of responses for sure. And then every time I get a marketing call, I'm like, why the hell do these people do this? Don't they know that I'll never ever talk to them? Well, obviously someone's talking to them and they're selling to somebody, otherwise they wouldn't be doing it. So I think that's a good way to look at
I'm
it.
going to give you two tips on the email and the phone call front. Okay, these are pretty good. Number one, whether or not you do it through email or through phone, I think it probably makes better sense via telephone because at least you've got them on the phone or a voicemail, right? But what you could say is, I'd like to get your opinion on something. Now, if I ask for your opinion, of course you can have my opinion, right? Who doesn't want to offer their opinion on something, right? So ask for their opinion on whether it makes sense to blah, 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 blah. Insert value and offer, right? So I want to get your opinion on whether it makes sense to blah, blah, blah. Yes, I will give you my opinion. It may or may not make sense, but why the hell not try it? Right? Sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. But the thing for me anyway is that I don't want to spend more time smiling and dialing if I don't have to, right? So I use a lot of other digital resources. That does not mean I don't get on the phone, but smiling and dialing is a way of cold calling. right? And most of the time in my market, that's not really well received. But some people say, yes, send me information. Okay, what does that entail for you? Is it a PDF? Is it a physical brochure? Do you have any of those assets created? What do they say? Do they solve problems? Do they show your work and the experience that you're going to provide? You might actually have that video and you could send that link to them. This is what an experience with me is like. It just depends on what you have in the way of assets to reinforce all that stuff.
Right. And again, you can do all of this in a very non-salesy way. It's just about being just being yourself and putting I feel that the more genuine we are, and it doesn't mean you have to, like, some people think that means like I'm going to share every detail about my family. I'm going to share every detail about my life and what's happening, this and that. I don't like that at all. I mean, I don't need people to constantly see pictures of my family and know what I'm doing and this and that. But I feel like when it comes to me marketing my business, people kind of have a sense for me. They know I love Fuji cameras. They know I love shooting wide open. They know that I'm going to be kind of joke around about a lot of things when I'm doing my thing. And I feel like so you can be sort of genuine and open with people without also like just divulging all your personal life, which is a terrible idea in my opinion, to do that on the internet. And so even if I'm like you, Rich, like I rather not cold call people, because that's just, for me, that's not really what I don't like to do that personally. I feel like an email is a much easier way to get to people, and I feel like LinkedIn is a terrible place to send people cold messages in
Oh
an
yeah.
opposite way.
Yeah.
Like I much rather just hit a connect button and let them look and see if they want to connect with me. Once you put a message in there, then it's like, because nobody wants to see that. So,
I
um,
could reinforce some of that really quickly by saying this. Okay. So much of all of that content and getting to who you are. And as remember, it's not about you. It has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with those clients and those
mm,
potential clients. So, but the point here is that to get where you want to go without having to jump through the hoops of who is this guy comes down to your brand. Okay. And when I say that, I do not mean your logo and I don't mean the colors on your page, but it comes down to brand in that a brand is what people are saying about you when you're not in the room. It is your reputation. Okay. It is how people feel about your brand, right? It's what they feel when they look at your work, when they hear your name. Do they stand up straight and like, I know him? Or do they go, oh shit, he's the expensive guy,
mm,
right? It's honestly, that's a brand. It's your reputation. So it's much more than, oh, I've got this pretty logo at the top of my site. I really spent $5 on Fiverr for it, but it looks cool. It's more than that.
right.
It's more than what you say. In fact, it's what you say and nothing about what you say.
Hmm.
It's just how people feel about any interaction with you, from your voicemail to your telephone call to your emails to the words you use on the site and the feeling they get. That's your brand.
Mm-hmm.
I bet if I were to ask you about Nike's brand, you could all tell me that pretty easily. Because remember, we were talking about corporations before, how people try to market like corporations. Well, the one thing, or actually two things, that big corporations have that most of us don't is a story and a brand.
Mm,
So that's really what we have to spend our time doing. And that involves building relationships to do that, which comes back to shaking hands and kissing babies, or kissing babies and shaking hands, or however you want to do it, right? It comes down to networking and then ultimately your reviews. So notice that there's a kind of a cyclical motion to all of this stuff that we've been talking about for almost 2 hours,
yep.
right? So now I get to say rinse and repeat. Do that for a whole lot of time and you'll develop a big reputation. And when you get that reputation, that's when you can charge more.
Right. And your brand, I find that when it comes to branding, also that takes time. You're not like, you should spend time thinking about it and trying to figure out all of that, right? But also that's going to evolve as you do it. So there's something about just jumping in and doing it. Like the more that I do this, the more that I brand myself, or however you want to call it, like online and in these different areas, the more refined I get in my approach, because you learn lessons from things. You'll know, because not everything you post is going to work. So if we're talking about like social media branding and marketing on social media, there's going to be a lot of stuff that doesn't resonate. Okay, well, now you know what not to post, but you're not going to learn that unless you try. So I think there's something to be said again for the consistency, and then really start to listen to what other people are saying, because that's key as well. Because I've had talks with some friends and people who are like business mentors and other photographers who I respect highly, and I didn't even realize some of the things that they perceive about my brand and what they think when they look at my brand. So I think it's good also to have that positive, these kinds of talks with people who have been doing it longer than you and who can give you that feedback. And they might pick up on something that you take for granted. A lot of times it's something that you don't even think about. It's just what you do. But for your potential client, that's a huge thing that they see, and that's part of the reason why they want to work with you. Some big positive there.
I'll kind of put a button or an exclamation point on all of it, by saying this. The longest journey begins with the shortest step. That's Confucius.
Yeah.
And then the other quote is, I didn't say all that shit. He also said that. Okay, that didn't really go over very well. Anyway, he did say the longest journey begins with the shortest step. He really did. Okay, and I know that because I was there. Well, right. So look, the truth is we're not going to get way ahead unless we start at the beginning.
Right.
Okay. That doesn't mean that's where you are, but we got to do something to keep the needle moving forward.
Right.
Right. So that doesn't mean that we expect everything to be like 100% all the time. Right. It's never going to be perfect, but in the nature of, as my buddy Mike Schacht likes to say, progress, not perfection.
Right.
Take a step forward, do something.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then if it works, do it again. If it doesn't work, change it up. That's called an A/B test. Try things, see if it works, and constantly do it consistently and regularly and gain some traction.
Awesome. Well, Richard, thank you so much for doing this. This has been like such a huge education for me. I feel inspired. There were so many things that I have to go back and I know that I'm going to be doing in my own business too. And I really appreciate your time. I want to remind everybody that if you need help with your website, you got to go to Rich. He has really helped me to turn my website into a money making like part of my business, and most of my business comes through my website. And so I owe a big part of that to Rich and him helping me to make the site workable, make the site so that it actually can generate income and make it easy for people to book me. So definitely check him out for that. Yeah, I appreciate it so much, man. Thank you for this. This was awesome.
My pleasure, Pete. Thanks so much for having me. I hope it was helpful to you
Thank
guys.
you, guys.
Yeah.
You guys rock.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thanks.
What I'm going to do, guys, so don't jump off just
Thanks,
yet.
guys.
I'm going to drop my email address into the chat. So if you have questions that you might think about after the fact, go ahead and just drop me an email.
And then I'm going to at some point soon, I will post this on my YouTube channel. And so I'll have all Rich's information in the description of that as well. So if people want to check out his stuff, and definitely check out his site, look at his work. It's awesome. But yeah, cool, man. I love it.
I appreciate it, buddy. Thanks.
All right, so let's wrap it up, people. Everyone, go have an awesome day. I hope that you get lots of clients, take some awesome pictures, and we'll see you soon. All right.